everybody. Welcome to the BOON podcast, where we are discussing Black Next Gen Ministry. I am Candace Wynn, your host, and I am here today with two people who I absolutely adore. I got my boy, Robert E. Purvey, from the great state of Texas, and also Sean Michael Watkins. Right? You were in Texas too, Sean.
I'm a proud Texan, born and raised.
I'm the eyeball out. I'm over here in Georgia.
God bless you.
You're still in the Confederacy. You're still in the Confederacy with me and Purvey. We got you, though. It's good.
Yeah, we try to make some moves over here in Atlanta. We try to make some moves over here. But I'm so glad to have you all here. So we have Sean, you are the Reverend, soon-to-be Dr. Sean Watkins, who is the Director of Training at Be the Bridge. And we're going to dive into a little bit more of who you are and your work in this conversation. But before we go there, y'all already know, we got to play this game of what? Culture tags.
Yes.
All right. So if you've never heard of this game before, how culture tags works is I'll put some letters on the screen. And for those of you all listening, I'll say the letters out loud so y'all can have an opportunity to participate too. And Sean and Purvey, I want y'all to try to guess what it is that the tag is, okay? Guess what
I'm about to lose all my black points.
That the phrase is
right here.
Don't worry, we got you safe. We got you covered, okay?
I got your back.
You got it? Okay.
I believe in you, Robert. I believe in you. I'm here for moral support.
Category, culture tags for y'all. The category that we have today, we got church, okay? This would be an easy one, all right? So the letters are GKMH. Now, this is something that you say when you do something that you probably should. Look,
I was saying, Sean, you ought to know that one. That's like one of your personal statements.
That is a universal black statement. God knows my heart. You trifling, you tripping, you lying. You broke every rule if you have to say that as a black person. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. That's right. And then what some people will say, now, Sean, I've heard you say this probably 1,000 times, and all I have to do is put the letters up, and I think it might it'll work. The letters are F-I-J, and this is something that you want the Son of our God, our Savior, to do. It's something where you're like, hey.
Oh yeah, Sean, come on,
Sean. I've heard you say this 1,000 times.
I've heard you say this.
You're going to say it 20 times on this conversation.
If it's broken, what you want him to do?
Fix it, Jesus.
There you go.
Candace is disclaimer. She gave the professional seminary. Robert wants you to say, hey, Sean, if it's broke.
What you want him to do?
He just quick.
If
I was like, I have no idea.
Broken, what you want him to do?
She's like, I have no idea. I have never said it. Oh yeah, never mind. Robert's right. Yeah, no, I say it all the time.
All right, last one. We still in church here. We still in church. The letters are IGRTC. Now, this is when the preacher is preaching, and the preacher is preaching for a really long time, and then they say this, but then they keep on preaching for like 10 more minutes, and then they say this.
Baptist. Mm-hmm.
Come on, what is it?
Baptist closed 4 times. I'm getting ready to close. I'm out of here, but before I do, let me ask you a question. I'm sorry. So y'all excuse me. I'm trying to stop. No, you're not. Sit down.
You're not
trying to stop.
You lying in the pulpit. You're not trying.
I know.
That's when it starts feeling good to the preacher. That's when it starts feeling good to the preacher, and the preacher's like, "Hey, listen, there people are with me, so let me just keep on going."
Just tell the truth. Like, okay, I got 5 more minutes, or hey, I'm gonna take 15 more. Like, don't tell me you about to close. Just tell me you about to take more time.
That's all I'm saying. So
that's so
I got
funny.
to help it. I can't help it. So I'm like, right. I'm going to the bathroom.
But you know what's so funny to me, and one of the reasons why we play this game, Culture Tags, is because there are just some things that are universally true amongst, not all Black people are the same. Like, we're not trying to pretend like we are the same. We know we're not all the same. But there are just some aspects of Black culture, Black colloquialisms that are just transcend and that are just so universally true. That's why we play this game of culture tags.
Yeah, I mean, they are. I mean, I love us, right? I love us. I love Black church. I love what we do. But when it comes to, before we jump too deep into the conversation, Sean, first of all, thank you for playing. I mean, you were great. You know, you were. I was worried before the show, but yeah, I knew you.
I was too.
But man, Sean, tell the audience more about you and what you do. Give us Sean. Who is Sean and what does he do?
Cool. Oh yeah, absolutely. Appreciate y'all. You know, always a joy and privilege, I think, to be on here and to be able to just do anything with y'all in any capacity, whether it's work, life, ministry, brainstorming about Black culture, just being ignorant in Atlanta when we get together for conferences and things like that. So always good to see y'all. Professional wise, I'm the director of training and strategy at Be the Bridge, which is a faith-based nonprofit that exists to empower people and culture towards racial healing, racial equity, and racial reconciliation. That's the elevator pitch. And so, founded by Latasha Morrison, New York Times bestselling author, Evangelical Book of the Year, I think back in 2020. And so, I've known Tasha. I met Tasha and Reggie Joyner same day, same table, same time back in 2016. And she and I just stayed in touch over the years, just kind of kept talking. We ended up being at conferences together. Either we were on panel together or a program, or we were speaking in some capacity. And then 2020 rolls around. She wrote her book, Be the Bridge, and it had become, hit the New York Times bestsellers list, really in response to George Floyd being killed. And she just called me and said, Sean, I need some help. We've got 70,000 people involved in Be the Bridge. They've got questions around our content. And she's like, your name keeps popping up in terms of just going all these different places and having questions about stuff. And so I think as a woman of color, she's one of the few people of color nationally doing this work. She's even smaller than that. She's a woman of color leading in this work. And so for me, a Black woman trying to talk about race and ethnicity in the United States, that was low hanging fruit. So signed on to be able to help my sister in that. I oversee our training department. So all of our trainings with organizations, regardless of if they're faith-based, Christian or not, we've worked with record labels, insurance companies, churches, denominations, etc. Do diversity trainings for them. And then I think probably in church language, the strategy part of my job is to really think through a discipleship arc for folks. Like, how do you move them from someone who knows nothing about race and ethnicity if they're white to someone who is so cross-culturally competent that they're going to build trust with people of color and not break them. If you've got someone who's a person of color, they may know their own cultural background very well, but not know anybody else. They don't know the native or indigenous or Latinx or Asian histories and stories and perspectives. And so how do you grow them to be about this collective liberation and not just about us? And so that's really kind of the work that I do, is helping us think through what types of programs and resources are we creating so that we have a global understanding of what God is doing. So yeah, it's a whole lot of fun. So that's what I do for work. I think
so multicultural.
Outside of that,
it's multicultural.
Oh, yes. I'm multicultural.
You're not just light-skinned Black. You really...
I appreciate that, Robert. Thank you so much. We'll be right back. Racial reconciliation amongst Black people only when we return. Colorism is a thing in the Black community. We've been recording for all of 5 minutes, and Robert's already kicked me out of Wakanda. Thank you so much, everyone. We'll be here.
No, you're in Wakanda, just on the east side with all the light skins.
Oh my gosh!
You're in Wakanda. You are part of the family.
No, I saw both. No, come on, man. There's one light skinned Black person in Wakanda.
Candace on the west side. I'm on the south with the darks.
Yes. No, they ain't letting me in. I'm on the outside, knocking on the force field.
She's on the west side. She's more mocha.
So listen, you just listen now, Sean. You just cut your hair, so you probably can't pass. You can't pass when your hair is long. You can't pass when your hair is short either.
You live in Atlanta. Robert knows this. We are in Texas. It is set on hell outside. It's 100 degrees outside. I was like, this hair ain't gonna make it. It's got to go. So I love it, but it gets cut off every summer. Now I bachelor's in African American Studies and History. I got my MDiv from Fuller. I'm working on my PhD now, and really kind of looking at Black culture, faith, and ethics. So what I always say on paper, I think what maybe we were talking about before, I think really what got me in this work, and y'all both know this. Dad's a lawyer, was a partner in his own law firm. Mom is a teacher with a master's degree. And so I had the upper middle class Black parents, married and lived in the suburbs, but they made unwise choices and got a divorce. And we moved out of the suburbs and moved back into the hood with my grandmother. And Dad's been an alcoholic, never been in recovery. Was actually part of the reason why my parents divorced. And my mom was really sad after they got a divorce. And so she started a drug addiction that really began when I was 5 and ended when I was 30. And I just hit 40 last year. And so I had these 2 Black parents with upper middle class family values. But the context in which those got lived out was the hood. So you grew up in a place to where you stop at every red light, you stop at stop signs and look in both directions. And then you go to Third Ward in Houston, where you get robbed if you stop at some stop signs and some lights. Like everybody runs
Literally.
this light. Like
That's
I
not
had, yeah,
figurative. That's
literally,
literal.
that's literal, right? And so I realized the rules were different. And
Yeah.
so that for me was kind of the beginning of this whole conversation around culture, about like we were talking about before, different kinds of black, different types of cultures. It's like, oh, the rules are different depending on the context you're in. And I just, in a good way, I've never recovered from that. I've been fascinated by that. So yeah.
Mm, that's so interesting. And it's interesting that you shifted into and it seems like that piece of your story is a huge piece of the why behind
Yeah.
what it is that you do through Be the Bridge and through your PhD studies. And I know that this is nothing that's novel to any of us. Right this month in our Facebook group, we're leaning into mission, talking about the what it is that we do. But I think it's so much more important to lean into the why of what we do, because when we lean into the why of what we do, then the what just looks completely different. When
Absolutely.
we really have a passionate why behind it, then the way that we're able to wake up and navigate, the way that we're able to talk to people, the way that we're able to just engage the entire conversation, and the energy that we feel when we do it, it
Yeah.
just feels a little bit different when our why is deeply embedded in something that's a bit more personal. So for me, I know something that really stuck out that you said, talking about the rules being different, right? Now, I think that from serving in the different capacities in which that I've served, in different churches, and doing some of the work and being a part of some of the things that I've been a part of, the rules are different too. And I think that there's certain things that we believe to be just the norm of ministry, right, or best practices of ministry, that aren't necessarily always translatable. That don't necessarily shift well from one context to the next, which is kind of leaning into the reason why BOON is to exist. The
Yeah.
reason for that, for us to be able to lean on each other within the Black community in a greater kind of way. There's a buddy of mine, a friend of mine, that used to serve in the church down the street from me when I lived in South Florida. He's ordained in the AME church. I am too. We were both serving in youth ministry at the same time, and we don't really talk a whole lot now, but it's not abnormal for us to be in conversation, for us to connect, because we're still, connected in ministry together. But he's in Maryland and I'm in Atlanta, and it's occasionally he'll close out his text messages with just hashtag same team. And every time I see that, what it does for me, it just makes me feel like I have somebody. And it makes me feel like I'm not by myself out here trying to save the world and save the future
Yeah.
of all of these children and youth. It makes me really feel like there's somebody who's rooting for me. And through BOON, I feel like what it is that we're working to do is unite people and allow that same team to still carry out through, regardless of whether some person is in Texas and someone else is in Georgia, regardless of our denominations, regardless of whether somebody serves in kids ministry and somebody else serves in youth ministry, or somebody else has the whole grade level cover. I mean, it's important for us to know each other, and it's important for us to be in community, and it's important for us to really just operate as if we're on the same team, and that's what this episode is about, and that's one of the reasons why we brought you, Sean, to be a guest on this conversation, because the way that community looks within not just the Black church, but within Black culture, is we have a deep history of community, and we have a deep culture of being together and being united.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I always kind of go back to a book that really shaped my thinking. It's by a Black guy named Eugene Robinson, and it's called Disintegration, the Splintering of Black America.
Mm-hmm.
And he said 70 years ago, to be Black in America just meant you were the descendant of slaves. Like that was it. If you said Black back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, it was understood. Everybody knew that. But today it means four different things. And he uses an acronym, which I actually use as TEAM whenever I teach it. So the first group he says is transcendent. Those are Black folks that have so much money that it transcends race. So Oprah, Jay-Z, Beyonce, any of them, they got Scrooge McDuck money to swim in, right? It's just your racial things are not going to affect their lives. The next one's emerging, and that's our biracial brothers and sisters, folks mixed with Black and fill in the blank, Black and Asian, Black and Latinx, black and white, black and indigenous, etc. But it's also our African brothers and sisters. We've got folks from South Africa, from Kenya, from Nigeria. We know there are no black folks in Africa, right? They are told they're black when they come to the United States. And so those folks are labeled in as black as well, too. You've got abandoned is that next group. And if you think about probably Hurricane Katrina, right? And we saw the dire poverty that was in New Orleans when all this stuff happened. And a lot of Americans were like, clutch the pearls. We had no idea this level of poverty was going on in the country. And we were like,
but they went to Mardi Gras every year.
Okay.
Like, this is normal, right? And then the last one is mainstream. So those are black folks, Mary got the house, the picket fence, the 2 cars and the dogs. They're doing all right. But if one or both lose their jobs, if they don't get another job in a year or two, they're going to be back in the hood because we don't have generational wealth. And so those 4 groups make up what it means to be black. Now, externally, all of those folks are called black, right? I think once you step inside the black culture and the black community, whether you got 2 black parents or not, whether you know how to play spades or dominoes or not, whether or not you know how to fry fish or not, we may take some cool points from you. You may lose some black points, but you're not going to be vetoed. We're not going to kick you out of the kingdom.
Right.
And so we've always had this idea of, I think, what does it mean for us to be a community, to be a collection of people? We've always been about collective liberation. It's been one of those staunch values that I think black folks have always had since they got kidnapped and they were brought over as enslaved peoples. They were from different tribes and different languages. We didn't have time to figure out what differences we were and how to stay divided. We had a common struggle. And Marcus Garvey, I think, said it best, when all else fails to unite the people, conditions will. And that's what's always been true for black folks. We've always had a same common struggle, and it's had us unified for as long as we've been in America.
Yeah. So with that, and I mean, I got to ask it. How do we see that play out in the church? Like, I know, like you talked about the different layers of it, right? How do we see that play out in the black church?
That is a very layered question.
Yeah, I had to pick your brain on that, Rico, because of what you said about team and what they represent is very, very real. But I think it's also real in the church sense, right? So if we're talking about being on the same team, if we're talking about moving forward together, I think we have to look at how that even flows down into the church on how we're different tribes, even in the black church. And how do we get tribes together with that common struggle to move the needle for all of us?
So I think about it in 3 ways. I think about preparation, the pastor, and then the people. Y'all know I grew up Baptist, so I like illustrations. So preparation, right? Preparation is seminary, right?
Yeah.
And these seminaries, they're not graduating pastors who are prepared to pastor, right? Like, that's our running joke. Like, they can. We can talk about substantiation, propitiation, atonement, ransom, soteriology, all these ologies and theologies. But if a white cop shoots an unarmed black person, they have not prepared anybody in seminary to deal with that.
Right.
And so I think you've got these pastors that are graduating, to be honest. And, I got 1 degree from Fuller. I'm working on a 2nd. I'm an adjunct professor at Gordon Conwell. And so, like, looking at these different seminaries, they're graduating folks that know how to pastor white people. They can intellectualize the gospel, but they can't, like, live it out practically, which is why you see all this foolishness happening in the country right now. So I think the seminaries need to be able to change. I think the pastors, to your point, especially folks who are pastoring black churches, see that diversity in their congregations. We got all 4 of those groups. You've got some very affluent black people that are coming to your church. They're probably tithe the most and keeping the lights on. You've got some folks that are biracial or they're in interracial marriages that are in your church. And you got to figure out, how do I pastor these people? How do I say these things? How am I still true to my blackness and the blackness of this church? But I also need to acknowledge there's a white wife sitting there. There's a Mexican husband sitting there. They love their families just the same. How do I still honor them and still make sure this is a black church? We've got folks from Nigeria and Kenya that have a completely different philosophy. My friend Jovin's from Ghana. And so whenever we talk about, I want you to think about home for a moment. I think about Houston, right? Robert may think about Dallas. Candace may think about either Atlanta or Florida. We're not sure. When I talk to somebody from
Houston,
Ghana,
Sean, we're both from Houston. We both think about Houston.
I know. I keep forgetting. My fault. Third.
No, and I think about DC, Maryland, not Florida too. So But we'll let that
Listen.
analogy go. We'll keep it moving.
Yeah, it's still chocolate. It still counts. My parent
My
is
parents.
Jobin is from Ghana, and when
Yeah.
I say think about home, Jobin does not think about Texas. She thinks
Yeah.
about Ghana, and so
Yeah.
you got
Yeah.
those folks in your congregation. So I think for black pastors especially, we know how to be communal. We know how to look out into the congregation and say, okay, there's somebody that I didn't hit with my sermon. There's somebody that I missed. I'm gonna go talk to them. Tell me your story because I want to make sure I don't do that. I want to make sure you feel included. So I think black pastors are not prepared for it in seminary, but we know how to do it organically. Like that's just a part of who we are as a culture. And then the last thing, that other one is the people. Man, we ain't got a choice.
Mm.
Earth is ghetto. We all want to leave. America is tripping right now. Good
Yeah.
night. I thought I was going to be in my 70s and 80s before I was like, back in my day, I'm 40. I'm already saying that these people have lost their minds. And so I
Right.
think as a consequence, the church, the black church especially, you don't have a choice. You have to embrace the diversity that is inside of blackness. We have got to think about how do we reach this next generation of people, because if we don't, we're going to lose them. So I think with respect to the church, like we don't have a choice as a congregation. If you want these folks coming, you have to address these issues. You have to be able to engage with them and meet them where they are, because otherwise they're going someplace else or they're not going at all.
That
Hmm.
part. That
Yeah, and that's so real because I think that there's such a huge, rich history within the Black church. Just a huge, rich history, huge culture that I know I experienced. And
Yeah.
and I want my kids to grow up having experience to be able to play some of these games like culture tags, right? And be able to connect with and understand. And the way that we do that, they say that whole piece of I don't know if this throws us off topic too much. If it does, oh well, it's just us, right? Friends having conversation. But you know how they say that when white people get a cold, the black people get the flu, right? And just looking at what has happened within Black churches. Now, this is not universally true for all Black churches, but coming out of COVID, there's a lot of churches, period, that are struggling, period. But there's a lot of Black churches that are really, really, really struggling. And the importance for us, like Sean, I said, you got on your BOON same team shirt. One of the huge reasons why we need to be connected and united is because we need each other.
Yeah.
We if we really want the future of the Black church to continue, the Black church to thrive within the future, then we're going to have to lean on each other, and we're going to have to lean on each other in a way that we probably have never really leaned on each other, because what's at stake is one, not just the Black church, but also what's at stake is the faith of an entire generation. Not to say they can't go somewhere else and still receive it, but if the churches are still going to be existing and there's going to be, kids here or there who are a part of them, we need to be able to help to train them properly. We need to be able to disciple them so that they can grow up understanding who God is and who Jesus is, and how Jesus' love for all of us, all people, especially if, oh my gosh, I feel myself going on a tangent. I'm going to pull myself back. But especially if what they're seeing is the things that they're seeing in the world. Right? If they see the things that they're seeing in the world and it's raising some of the questions, I'm not going to go into some of the conversations that I had with my kids, because I'm not one of them preachers that push their kids out there like that. But I know I've seen firsthand how my kids have been my kids 6 and 9 years old have been impacted by the things that they see out there. And if you're experiencing all of that in the world, you need a place to understand that you were made in the image of God, right? And that is a beautiful thing. The way that God made you is not a mistake. I'm gonna stop, but I could keep on.
But no, it's like what it has to be, I think. And this past week, I hosted an event here in Texas, and it's something that really brought some attention to when it comes to Black leaders in next gen. Like, it goes back to what Sean talked about, the seminary piece. To me, it's the training piece. We have to train our leaders how to be biblically correct, but also to be culturally relevant, right? We have a lot of people that work in our churches that are just there to help, but they don't have enough intellect or insight to actually push the people forward. So I have kids. I had kids attend this conference from all over the state of Texas, and it was a lot of their first time ever engaging in something that enlightening about their faith, not church, learning about who Jesus was and the authenticity of the Bible, because a lot of times our churches don't give in-depth teaching or knowledge to our kids because we're always looking to do something fun. We want them to have fun. We think the fun stuff keeps them coming, and that's church universal. But the black church, like we think we got to have. If I go to another black church and you have a rapper on stage talking about Jesus is better than dope, like I'm,
Bro,
I'm walking out.
I get up and walk out.
I'm walking
walk
out.
I do.
I'm walking out. Like stop trying to force what culture looks like on the church, and we need more leaders to unite and come together and see what does our community need. Maybe we need less church services and more community service. Maybe that's what unification looks like. But like Sean, and I mean, I want you to jump in here, because I know you being the bridge, you see it a lot. Why are we so as what in your studies, in your traveling and speaking and people from all over the country, what is our black church? What is our hesitation for uniting? Like why is it so hard for us? Because you know how it is. We grew up in the same city. So, I can't speak for no other state, no other city, but for our city. In Third Ward, there's AME, there's Baptist, there's Kojic churches, all within between South Park, Sunnyside, and Third Ward, at least 100 churches. At least 100, maybe even more.
All four corners.
Come on, and I'm talking about those are black parts of the city. And so, but why are we hesitant to come together? Because it's not just black Methodist kids, it's not just Baptist kids or Kojic kids, or like it's all of us. So why are we so hesitant to unite?
Man,
what you think about that?
That's a great question. There's a couple things come to mind. I think one, obviously, again, I'm going back to the seminaries. I love throwing them under the bus, just because they, look. If you build it, they will come. They have built a lot of foolishness around here. And so I think part of it is that, like, these seminaries, and again, I'm 40, so I can't speak to what happened before I got here, but I got some ideas. I think that old generation, like King's generation, Medgar Evers and all of them from the civil rights movement, if you got to go to seminary, which a lot of them didn't, but the black church, it was a place where we had everything that we needed. Our families were together. Our leaders were in one spot. Our resources were collected. They were together. And my friend Craven talks about it here in Austin a lot too. Something happened when segregation ended. Once it ended, the folks who had the degrees and had the money left.
Come on, man.
And it became an economic issue. We were all together in the hood when we were segregated. So poor black folks, rich white folks, intelligent, educated, or otherwise, we were all together. But because we were all together, grandmama was raising everybody's kids on the block. That black doctor that didn't have any white patients had black patients in the neighborhood entirely. Pastors, the exact same thing. They had everyone that was there. Well, segregation ended. Everybody left. These folks started going to seminary, and they didn't necessarily teach you how to pastor. In seminary, they taught you how to run a business. They taught you how to get more members into your congregation, how to fundraise, and how to get more dollars coming in. So they don't know how to pastor folks. There's one gentleman who shall remain nameless that applied to be a professor at Fuller. And it was in the midst of kind of all of their foolishness that was going on. I got asked to be on 2 hiring committees to help Fuller hire 2 black faculty. And again, brother shall remain nameless because he didn't get the job. But something he said stayed with me. He was teaching at a seminary, and I was like, dude, how'd you get involved like in the work that you're an older black guy? And he said he got his bachelor's in Black Christian studies in the 80s. He got his MDiv back then, and he said he was working on his PhD in seminary to be a professor. And again, late 80s, white cop shot and killed his cousin, unarmed black guy, in LA, in Oakland actually, in the 80s. And he said, I went home, I had 2 degrees, I was working on my 3rd. And he said, my family was sitting there crying, and there was nothing that I could say to console them. I had all this seminary experience. I had all this theological experience. I've been writing all of these papers. There was nothing that I could think of to help my black family in that moment of crisis understand what God was doing or why God would allow this to happen. And he said, in that moment, I realized I was being educated outside of my context. And I think for a lot of these black pastors, too many of them have been educated outside of their context.
Come on,
How many black pastors do we know that are like drinking the Kool-Aid? I mean, love Hillsong, love the soteriology, and I'm not saying any of those things are wrong, but like I'll tell you when I was in seminary once. So like we were sitting there and they were talking about, I'm gonna go heady on purpose. They were like, Jesus' death on the cross. Is it substitutionary? Is it atonement? Is it ransom? Is it propitiatory? And it's like all these different things. Man, look here, Candace, I took off my glasses and I stared out the window like I was on the cover of a 90s R&B Boys Men CD cover. Like I was gone. Like I checked out entirely. And my professor, he was like, Sean, this is a riveting conversation. Don't you care? And I was like, can I be honest? Yeah, I was like, no, I don't care at all.
Lord,
Did Jesus pay it
I
all?
get nervous with your honesty now.
I was like, did Jesus pay it all? I don't care if he paid it cash, check, credit card, electronic funds transfer. Like nobody cares. I got single parents in my church. They want to know God loves them. God loves their kids. God's got a purpose for both their lives. She don't care how Jesus died, and you don't know. You guess it. I'm not going to sit up here and do this. And so I think for a lot of these Black pastors, they have been taught that this is what it is to understand God. You have to intellectualize God. And for Black folks, it's not like, how can I think about God? With Black folks, it's like, can this be lived? If I listen to your sermon, is Bae still going to cuss me out when we get in the car? Like, is this going to help me love my boyfriend, my girlfriend, my spouse, my boo, my kids, myself? It's going to help me love God. But if it's not doing that, I don't want to hear it. And so I think a lot of these Black pastors, they're starting to come back to that. They're starting to realize like, oh, if I'm not preaching a whole gospel that meets people where they are, then it doesn't count. It doesn't matter. Like Candace was saying, I say it too, like it's 2023, right? If we take somebody who's 22 years old, they were born the same year 9/11. They were born in 2001.
Yeah.
They've seen Barack Obama and Trump both get elected. They've seen Me Too, BLM, DACA, anti-Asian hate, not to mention all of these school shootings, like the stuff that we're supposed to see once in a generation. They've seen everything in the last 22 years, and they have zero tolerance, zero patience for this foolishness. And so I think we've got to preach a gospel. We've got to see a Jesus that does not have soft hands. He's got the hands of a carpenter. He was in them streets. He was working. He had cross-cultural conflict. He was rolling with 12 dudes, and one of them was packing a knife, even though Jesus could do all kinds of stuff. Like, you have to humanize them and say, what you're going through in life, they went through too. I think when you pastor and you minister that way, then that works. And too many of these pastors came in saying, I want to be great. I want to like write books. I want my name on the building. They came in as individuals. And now to Robert's point, they're realizing, oh no, wait, we need each other. There's a collective struggle. Nobody cares how big your church is. Nobody cares how many members you got. If you're not actually helping people, they're not going to keep coming. And your influence, I think, and your ministry is going to decrease as a responsibility, as a part of that too. It's not about numbers; it's about helping people.
Yes,
I think we're trying to get back to that.
So, I mean, you opened up a can of worms, and I have to pour them out a little bit because here's what I see with us, and this is why I love BOON. All right, because we get to talk about us, and y'all know how it is with family. We can talk about each other, nobody else better, right? You know,
absolutely.
You know, so when it comes to that, we see in our Black churches with what you said. A lot of our smaller Black churches look to get help from white churches because our larger Black churches aren't giving back to our smaller Black churches. So there's an idea that I have to become like a white church, or I have to have worship like a white church, or get training from a white institution so I can grow my church financially and grow my church with people, right? Because a lot of the churches who have done well, the pastors have gotten to the point to where, okay, we have too many people to worry about. We can't give back to our smaller brothers and sisters, right? And so you bring up a very good point that we have to get past the point is how we began this mini conversation. Like, it's not just a denominational issue. Like it's a Black issue. And if we're going to get better as a people and as Christians, right, we have to start helping each other. And whether you whether you dip them in the water, or whether you sprinkle it on their face, or whether you wash feet, or whether you don't, it doesn't matter what your religion practices are. Like, it's like you said, I don't care if Jesus paid for it, debit, credit, cash saver, EBT, don't matter. Like he paid it all. So if he paid it all for us all, we got to work together.
Yeah. I think Robert, to your point, and I think both them approaches is wrong. That are wrong. Excuse me, I'm tired. It's Friday. My bonic slipped in. So for the white pastors, right? they're like, oh God, we've got to like do missions. We've got to go into the inner city. And so like they'll go find a poor black church and cut a check. It's like, oh, thank
Yeah.
God. I've done the hard work of racial reconciliation. Anybody can write a check. Have you like actually done the work? Like, can you submit
Right.
to a person of color in
Mm.
leadership OB? Okay, now you're doing something. Like
Talk
I
about
think
it.
for black churches, like the bigger black churches, right? Like they're not trying to like support us. They're trying to hire us. And so a smaller
Mm.
black church like doesn't partner with a large black church because that pastor is what? He's poaching members.
Yep.
He's trying to like, oh man, y'all should just close and fold in. He wants your worship pastor. He's
Yep.
going after you. Like it's all of those things. And so it's that crabs in a
Wow.
barrel mentality.
You're
And so I
right.
think both approaches are wrong, man. It's like
Yeah.
how can you look at that church and say, look, that brother's or that sister's got a small church, it's 100 people, but those 100 people, they don't want to go to your 3,000 member church. Like
Right.
there's some things you can't do wholesale. They want to walk in and everybody knows who they are. They know everybody there. They want that. They don't want to go to a concert every Sunday. It's different strokes for different folks, and that's cool. But we don't do that. And so the only place that we can go return to are the white folks. And they're like, because I wrote a check, I've solved the race problem. Or, hey, we really want to like be a diverse church. I'm actually going to support you for a year. But then at some point, I'm going to have a conversation that says, why don't y'all fold and come join our congregation as well? Because we want to be multi-ethnic, which is a nice way of saying, y'all come, you're not going to see any reflections of your culture on stage,
Right.
but we actually want to look out and see some black people in the audience because we've got the true gospel. Last thing I'm going to say, because this is my soapbox and I'm going to shut up. This is my other issue with the seminaries as well, too. When people go to seminary, I was just
Pause. Everything that he is saying does not include Emory University's Candler School of Theology. Now proceed. We're covering Candler here, okay? I love me some Candler.
Oh yeah, no, I wouldn't know. I named the two. I'm throwing under the bus. The one I'm paying and the one that pays me. I was like, everybody else, get in where you fit in. I ain't touching them. I think for these seminaries as well too, like it's like when someone, all the ethnic groups, when they go to seminary, they all go back to their own context and communities. Most of them do. Asian pastors go back to Asian context, whether they're Japanese, Taiwanese, Filipino, whatever. Same thing goes for indigenous brothers and sisters. The strange thing happens when black people go to seminary. We go in loving the black, and this is, it's a generalization, but we go in loving the black church, loving our history, loving our worship, loving how we preach and teach and all that. And we graduate from these seminaries and we're like, oh man, like I wasn't taught proper theology. That's what I learned in seminary. Like the seminaries taught me, like I didn't have an understanding of a good Christology. And so they leave thinking that there's something wrong with the black church and they only want to go work in white churches. Wow. And then that needs this shift, right? What is it about getting a seminary education that makes you reject your own people and your own culture? I think and that's not all seminaries, but it's too many of them, right? A good seminary education should show you black folks have always been on the same team. Our theology is in our worship. Our theology is in our oral traditions. It's in the call and response. We've always been on the same team. You need to have the decoder ring to understand that. We understand that as marginalized peoples and as people of color and black folks especially, white folks haven't. And so what does it mean for us, again, to make sure that we're getting the tools that we need to pastor in this generation? We have a next generation, again, that's coming up on the scene now with a lot of issues, and they are looking at us. And if we're able to solve social issues, they're like, cool, this is a congregation I want to be a part of. If we're not able to solve those and not able to speak to them, there's a revolving door. I think this generation, they just have zero tolerance and zero patience for soft answers. We got real issues and they want real solutions. And when you offer them, that's hope. And when you don't, they're like, I'm out. I want something else.
Mm-hmm. And the reason why that's so important is because, everything isn't for everybody, right? I mean, every church is not going to appeal to everybody. Every organization, that creates faith-based resources is not going to appeal to everybody because we are a diverse people. There was someone on our team on our BOON team who asked us earlier as we were preparing for this conversation, saying, same team just for Black people. And the truth of the matter is, when initially thinking about it, yes, like Purvy's nodding his head for those of y'all listening. So the reality is when God first planted, hey, use that same team language for BOON. Yeah, of course I'm thinking about my people, right? I'm rooting for everybody Black, right? Issa Rae said it best, right? Yes, I
Come on,
am.
Issa Rae, yeah.
She said it best. But the reality is, if we are kingdom minded,
Yeah.
if we're kingdom minded and we're all going after the kingdom, then we're all on the same team. Whether you're white, whether you're Black, whether you're Asian, whether you're Pacific Islander, whether you're Hispanic, whether you're Latino. I mean, regardless, I think it's one of those things where if we're all going after the same mission, then why not operate as if we're on the same team? Because the truth of the matter is, race is one variable that has divided us for way too long. And we've created these communities amongst ourselves because we've had to, because of the different ways that people have othered other people. Right. So yeah, same team is for us. But the truth of the matter is, if we're all kingdom minded and we're all going after the mission and the Great Commission, then it's for everybody, because we're all heading in the same direction. Now, I know, Purvi, you might not agree with me. I know you might not agree with me, but I do think that it's one of those things, like you were saying, Sean. Like people, these big white churches are looking to hire Black people, because we are in the age of everybody's trying to diversify, right?
And I tell them not
Everybody's
to
trying
go.
to.
I say, you better not go. You better not go. You better not.
Why do you say that though? Let's unpack that.
Because I, and if you know me, you know this about me. I'm about building bridges. I believe that, yes, we all should be kingdom minded, but I believe that the bridge is built better coming from your context than it is going into their context, because then you get whitewashed, right? And then you're looked at as aggressive. You're looked at as really, we don't care about that. Like, it's kind of like it's our way or no way. And then you almost, I mean, it's boom. All right, you lose your Black card. It's like, because you like every Black person that I've known that's left a Black church and worked for a white church, they said, "Oh, I wish they could pay me more because I'll lead this white church."
But look, so check this out. Before I left, we'll get personal, right? Before I left, I was serving at a Black church. I've always served only at Black churches. When Orange first reached out to me about the job opportunity that I currently have. Now, for those of you who don't know Orange is a predominantly white organization that's doing some major work within the, that diversity space. But I was the second Black person that they hired, right? I've been at Orange for 4 years, and I've seen it evolve a lot in those 4 years, though there's still a long way to go. I've seen it evolve a lot, right? I was so hesitant to engage in a conversation about a job there, because I didn't want people to look at me and think that I didn't understand Black culture. I didn't understand Black church. People will look at you and they'll see that you'll work at a predominantly white place, or you're connected to a predominantly white organization or church or something, and they automatically forget, hey, I went to FAMU. I grew up in DC. I grew up in PG County. I live in Atlanta, and I don't live in gentrified Atlanta. I live in the part of Atlanta that ain't been gentrified yet. We just starting to get people running down the street with no shirts on, okay?
I'm guilty.
That's brand new.
I thought that about you when I first met you. I thought that about you when I first met you. When I first met you, I'm like, here we go, another Oreo.
Yeah.
I didn't.
Yeah,
I didn't, and I'll tell you why I didn't. I didn't, because Candace had the spirit of Keisha. She had the spirit of Keisha. Robert, when I first met Candace, I was like, oh, Orange has hired another Black person. I didn't even have time to ask those questions, because you're right. Those are the questions you ask. It's like, what are you doing in this space? Like, why are you here? But Candace was in the back of the room with her arms folded and rocks in her jaws, and she was mad at everything that was being said from up front. I was, nope, never mind. She gets it. Never mind. She is hot as fish grease.
I met her when she was a code switcher.
Thing. Yeah.
I met her during a code switch moment.
And that's the thing. That's the thing. And you have to be able to navigate certain spaces. And I feel like one of the things I love about me being here and doing this work on BOON is I can be me. I can say what I want. You know what I mean? Like, in no way does anything that I say reflect the organization from which I work. The values, the principles, I feel like, we pretty much align, but there's a certain different Candace that has to show up when I enter those spaces. And a certain Candace the Candace that has to show up is important, because people need to hear me. And
Mm-hmm.
everybody can't hear you when you're talking a certain kind of way. You got to be able to speak in a language. And I think we talked about this on one of these episodes. You got to be able to speak in a language that people can hear you. So
Yeah.
if you get me in a conversation one-on-one, oh, you'll see me, right? But if you see me on the stage, you're not always gonna see that, right? So BOON, and the need for BOON to be able to provide community so that people can be their authentic selves, right?
Yeah.
So that they can go into a place where they are learning about children's ministry, youth ministry, next year ministry, whatever you want to call it, right? And be able to bring your authentic self, your authentic struggles, your authentic successes, because our successes look different. Our struggles look different. You know, our experiences look different. When we can be able to be bringing that authentic self into the space and not have to really do that code switching. That's why BOON is important. That's why community is so important. That's why it's so important for us to come together, because the only way for us to really, really thrive is if we're able to really bring our authentic selves, right? Our fake self, it ain't go. It ain't gonna do nothing to move the needle, to move the dial anywhere.
So
Yeah.
I think you
And I
bring
say
up a
too,
very
like-
good point. Go ahead, Sean. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say like because like we're both like we're all like laughing and talking, and in the chat we're like playing devil's advocate with each other too, so just so folks know it's kind of listening. And I think it brings up like the whole like topic and thing that we're talking about, right? Of being on the same team. Like when you look in scripture, it's like, do you want to? We see these images of like an Esther or a Nehemiah, right? Somebody that's working in the empire, that's got power, right? Esther's a queen, Nehemiah's a cupbearer to the king. They've got position, they've got influence, they've got access to resources. If Nehemiah's not the cupbearer, they don't rebuild the walls of Jerusalem. If Esther is not the queen, the Jews don't survive from Haman and all that foolishness, right? So you got to have folks that have access to power, that are willing to play the game to be able to help folks. But you've also got to have a Moses as well, too. You got to have somebody on the outside saying, yeah, no, y'all tripping, burn it down and rebuild it and start over. And, but they're on the same team. They're on the same team. They don't have competing values or interests at all. And so I think that's the key takeaway that we're all trying to communicate is if you've got Black folks that are doing those things, they're on the same thing. I think to Robert's point, which is what Candace is saying as well, too, is like too many times we have been tokenized, right? Like we have seen, I think Brian Loritz has a book called Right Color, Wrong Culture. And it's a narrative story they're talking about. It's a white church neighborhood is actually it's reverse gentrification. Like there's diversity that's there. And they're like, we want to be able to hire somebody that's reflective of the community. And they interviewed 3 Black pastors, and the illustrations they gave for each of them, they're kind of caricatures of it. They were like, one of them was Ice Cube. Ice don't code switch. Never has, never will. He got one setting. So like that type of a pastor only works in like Black church settings. Like in white car, if he closes with a hoop, like white people are not going to understand it. Like he's not going to be able to translate. The next one they picked was somebody that was kind of analogous to Carlton on Fresh Prince, right? Very easy, very palatable to white folks. May or may not resonate with Black people at all, right? If you hire their brother and put him on set with a white church, white folks are going to love it. You hire their brother and it's like, he's reflection of all things Black. We have questions, right? And that's why we'll torment them the whole time on the show. But then the third one they had was like somebody like Denzel Washington. Denzel is himself in every movie Denzel's in. He plays himself, but everybody loves him. And that's the thing, right? It's like, can we get to the place where Candace doesn't have to code switch? She's fully herself in every context she's in.
This is
Okay.
Himself everywhere he is. I'm my whole self. I ain't got to switch it off. So.
Wait.
That analogy was so gold, though.
Somebody is driving and somebody's working out, and they gonna hear you say this, so they don't have to rewind and go back and hear it again. Man, say I'm for. I know we got to get out of here, but say that again, because that is so powerful.
The book is called Right Color, Wrong Culture by Brian Loritz. And again, like, it's like most books. I don't agree with everything in there, but that illustration is huge. They picked these 3 Black pastors and they don't fit for various reasons. That third one finally does. But the illustration that the guy gives when he's narrating it, Ryan Loritz rather has the person narrating it is like, he got these 3 pastors. One of them is Ice Cube. And that was like in the book, it's a Black pastor that shows up in a piece and chain, 3-piece suit, rings on every finger, and he closes every sermon with a hoop. One Friday on a hill called Calvary. Right? That's not going to work in a white Presbyterian church. They've never heard that before. They think he's choking. It's not going to work at all. It ain't going to work. The next one was a Carlton, right? Carlton from Fresh Prince. Grew up in the suburbs, Black family, but still very assimilated to white culture, right? And so white folks would probably love him in some respects. Put him in a Black Baptist church. Put him in Wheeler Avenue Baptist Church in Houston, Texas, in the heart of Third Ward, where I grew up. Carlton ain't gonna fit there as a staff pastor. He can intern there, but to like lead that church, to be the senior pastor there, no, because his lived experience is different from the folks that live in that zip code. It's not bad or wrong, it's just different. And the third one is Denzel Washington. Denzel plays himself in every movie he's in. If he is in Training Day, if he is the Equalizer, if he is a lawyer, whatever, it doesn't matter what it is. Denzel is always himself. And so we need to hire folks and create spaces like that where we don't have to code switch and be fully ourselves. The litmus test I always say when I do trainings for majority white organizations, if you hire people of color, is do they have to code switch if they're around you? If they say, I am 100% different than who I am when I'm in this organization, when I work here, there's a shelf life. Like they on their way out. It's only a matter of time. They are exhausted. There are microaggressions. If I can't be my full self when I'm here, none of us bring all of who we are. But if I'm like more than 50%, I got to power down in order to be here. And it's just a job. It's just a paycheck. And the moment anybody comes along and says, I will pay you $5 more and you can play spades on Friday, I am out like slavery is over. Look here, let me holler at y'all. It's been real. No, I'm done. I'm through. Do you want to do an exit interview? I already got another job. No, that's it.
Right.
No. We through. So that's it. Like, you got to be able to recognize those things. Yeah, man. That's huge.
That's so real because I know all those people. I know Ice Cube. I know Ice Cube. I know Carlton. I know all three of them.
I got people in my head as you were going through. I'm like,
you can see them. You can see them. You're like, got it.
You there.
You got it.
And that's why this one of our missional pieces of BOON, emphasizing community, is so important because we need to feel safe, to not have to code switch. We need the freedom to be ourselves. We need the freedom to, like I said earlier, to bring our authentic experiences, our authentic struggles, our authentic successes to the table. And in a community, in a safe place where we can actually start help moving the needle ourselves within our churches, but also helping others to do the same. So what does that look like within BOON? I'm going to jump in here real quick. Like our vision of inclusive community will provide opportunities to engage just on our national network level, on our Facebook group. So if you're not in our Facebook group, head over to Facebook and find the BOON community on Facebook, or head to thebooncommunity.com where you can have access to our Facebook group too. Right now, we've launched our national network on Facebook. We'll be launching our local networks, local communities in 2024. I'm going to roll that out so people can get together with others right in their area, and through all of those spaces, whether it's the Facebook group or within a local level, we're going to have some collaborative conversations where we just engage in some guided conversation, guided discussion around different areas of ministry or leadership development. I'm excited about the way that the community can come together through BOON for the sake of the next generation. Purvi, Sean, I am so grateful to have you all here with us today on this. This has been a good conversation. It's been a long one, but it's been a good conversation.
No, it would be. When you got your two brothers on here, you already knew it was going to be longer than 45 minutes.
Listen.
You already know.
Yes,
already. We always got something to say when we get together.
I thank y'all for being here and for sharing. And for my girl, Ashley Johnson, who's in the background. Hey, boo. Appreciate you being there and helping to guide us through this conversation. All right, y'all. If all hearts and minds are clear, we're going to end this thing. I will see y'all later. Bye.
Appreciate it. Y'all take care.